Hey guys and gals, it's your boy JR, aka Lone Wolf Bushcraft. Hope you guys and gals are all doing well. Tonight's live stream is going to be talking about setting up your camp. So, one of the topics will be called setting up your camp. The other topic will be talking about the TV show called Alone. And then the last topic will be called Bush Recipes. And I'm saving the bush recipes for the last topic. And the reason I wanted to do that third topic, bush recipes, is because I saw Panoy Ahoy today when I came home from work. I saw Panoy Ahoy's Balut Challenge. So congratulations to Panoy Ahoy for completing the bush challenge. That's pretty cool. And like I said, when I came home from work, I got to replay that video where he's eating balut. So that's pretty cool. For those of you who are not familiar with balut, um, balut is a duck egg, and you can go to the Panoy Ahoy channel, and he's peeling this duck egg that's got balut, and so it's pretty cool. Hey, what's up, Deborah? How's it going? Deborah in the house. What's happening? How's it going? What's up? How's it going, Hong Kong? So, people are coming in the chat now, so that's pretty cool. All right, how's it going? Oh, that's pretty cool. People are already liking the live stream. Sissy, Hong Kong. Aw. What's up, Gene? Gene says, Yahoo! Yeah, Yahoo for the live stream. Night night, take care. Yeah, night night. That's pretty funny. My little family's saying night night. I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Deborah. I'm doing cool. So, yep, Daddy Lone Wolf's doing good. Hope you guys and gals are all doing well. And yeah, I hope all my baby sisters are doing well out there. I call my Filipinas that I talk to in all the Filipino live streams my baby sisters. I use that as a term of endearment. So, like I said, welcome to Lone Wolf Bushcraft YouTube live stream. I'm your host, JR, aka Lone Wolf Bushcraft. And today I'll be talking about, there's three areas I wanted to cover. One is called setting up your camp. And the other one's called the TV show Alone. And then I'm going to touch base on bush recipes. And what gave me that idea to touch on bush recipes is simply the balut gave me the idea to talk about bush recipes. So I thought that would be fun to do, to talk about bush recipes. I thought that'd be pretty cool. So let's go ahead and jump into the first topic about setting up your camp. And it kind of ties along with the second topic, which is Alone, the TV show Alone. If you go on the History Channel, you can click on the TV show Alone, and it's really cool. There's a whole process when trying to join the TV show Alone. It's super, super cool. And sometimes when I'm watching that TV show Alone, I try to think what I would try to do if I was in that situation. Yeah, you got to show you can build a campfire. I think the first process in the tryouts of Alone, you first have to show you can build a shelter. And then you have to show you can do a variety of ways of making fire. So I think they make them do a bow drill fire. And for those of you who are not familiar with a bow drill fire, uh, they you grab you kind of bend one stick like this, and you put a string on there. You take another stick that's straight like this. You twist the string, or you hold the bow with the string. You drop the stick down in there, and then you twist this one, and then it's holding the stick. So that way, every time you move the bow like this, the string's moving the piece of wood like this. There's another piece of wood at the bottom that you put right there. You kind of cut a groove right there, kind of like a B groove right here. You put the bottom of your stick there. Of course, your bow's holding the other stick like this. And as you go like this with the bow, it creates friction. So basically, it's moving the piece of wood like this. And eventually what it does is starts to create ambers there. And then you want to have some kind of nest like that you've already pre-made. It's really close to where you're making ambers. And what happens is when you start going like this and start moving that stick like this, at the very bottom, it starts to create, it starts to smoke a little bit. And when it starts to smoke, that's when you're creating ashes. Anyways, once you create some ashes there, you're going to put that into your nest that you built. And so that's one of the first things they try to get the contestants to do to see if they can create a fire through bow drill. Now, the second way they create a fire, they have their bundle there, and they got their ferro rod. Let me show you guys what a ferro rod is. That's so funny. I should have presetted that up. I think I got a ferro rod handy real quick. So let me grab that. So first one's the bow drill, and then the second one's the ferro rod. So let me see if I got this handy here. Oh, they're cool. So here's a ferro rod. And like I said, on the TV show alone, the first one is to see if they can do, first is see if they can build a shelter. The second is see if they can build a fire. And I think one of the first fires they have them do is the bow drill fire, which I just explained. And then here's one example of what a ferro rod looks like. So, and a lot of ferro rods have this black coating. And then once you scrape off the black coating, that's the ferrocene material that lights the fire. And in case of this one, it comes with its own striker. And you just scrape that ferro rod, and it causes sparks, and you scrape it into your dry bundle. So yeah, the first one is for them to show that they are able to build a shelter, and also able to make a campfire. So, and then the other skills they have them show off is what's their knowledge as far as collecting wild edibles. So they do that as well. You got to kind of show the people of Alone, or the people that are putting you through the tryouts, you got to show them, you have knowledge of wild edibles. And then the other thing you have to show is whether you can process game, whether you can catch game, and what kind of traps you can set up to catch games. One of the real basic traps is, let's pretend this is a rock, and then this is a stick. And at the bottom here, on the ground here, you put some kind of thing to entice. Hey, good night. So anyways, it's funny when you're doing a live stream. So pretend this is a rock. This book's a rock. And you put your stick right there. And this is just a very basic trap. And so when, like, say a mouse or a squirrel comes by that's enticed by what you put right here, some of that could be just other kinds of animals you've trapped before, and you've chopped it up and put that in there. Anyways, the little mouse comes there. The little mouse or raccoon comes there. And when he gets the thing, the whole point is to make this stick kind of like a light trigger. And basically what happens is it trips the stick and the rock falls down on the mouse. So that's one real basic trap. The other kind of trap, it's called a wire snare, and it's exactly as it sounds. It's kind of a sometimes they're silver looking and sometimes they're kind of copper looking, and it's a snare wire, and you make a little hole about kind of like I don't know, kind of about like that big, because you're trapping just really small game like a mouse or chipmunk, or as big as a squirrel. But anyways, that's called a snare wire, and you just lay that on the ground, right? And you kind of create a nailed pathway for the little chipmunk or mouse to come, and then you lay little trail stuff there for it to eat. And the point is that after it's finished eating, as it walks, the whole point is you hope the snare catches their little leg, and basically it holds it there for a while. And so that's another way to, or sometimes their little head gets in the hole. I've seen some people hang snares this way, lay them on the ground, but I've also seen them hang their snare like this. So when the little game comes, they put their hole in there, and then when they leave, basically the more they keep trying to escape, eventually it whacks them. And so that's a second. So one is the trap that's got a stick holding up the. So one of them's like this. It's got the thing that falls, and then the other one's the snare wire. And so to go over again, what they have to practice is they got to be able to show they can build a shelter. They got to be able to show they can make a campfire, and then they have to show. So yeah, shelter building, campfire, and they got to show they can trap and acquire game. And those that make it through that, um, there's some people coming in the chat here. What's happening? Party. There's my loves. So I'm going to show these. I'm going to show these real quick. These are people coming in the chat. They're talking to each other in the chat here, which is cool. Hope you guys connect with each other down below in the chat. Hold on, I'll be right back, guys. I'll be right All right. Had to do me a quick little intermission. Sorry about that. So, so yeah, we're so yeah, shelter building, being able to build a campfire, and also showing that you'll be able to acquire either gathering wild edibles or also trapping game. So those are the things that they got going on when trying to try out for alone. And like I said, when I'm watching that TV show, I'm trying to think of what it would be like to try and qualify. Um, it's so funny when watching them. You see the contestants all have different reactions when they're on alone. I'm trying to show the as people are coming into the live stream. I'm trying to show some of their comments off. Um, so yeah, once and usually it's about 10 or 12 of them that make it through the tryout process of alone. And of course, when I'm watching this, since I'm into bushcrafting and camping, and there is a part of the survival aspect that I find pretty interesting as well in the Alone series. And once again, you can catch that Alone series if you go on the History Channel. And there's tons of episodes there of Alone. And it's really cool, especially if you are into camping or bushcrafting or survival. Alone's a really good series to watch because you're watching 12 people and they all have various different backgrounds. Like I think one person was really experienced in wild edibles. Another person was experienced in survival skills, and I think another person was like a hunter. And then sometimes they would get people that are experienced in both edibles and also trapping and hunting. Um, and it was really neat. It's a mixture of men and women who were able to qualify and come on the Alone. And they picked a lot of different places. They picked a few places, I believe, in Canada, and then they picked another place called Patagonia. If I'm not mistaken, they might have even picked places in Alaska. And what's wild, some of these places they pick, not only do you have to worry about building a shelter, you also have to worry about uh, some of the wildlife that you may encounter. In one cases, there was large moose and bear. In another place, it was coyotes, wolves, and bears. And then another place, they had to deal with mountain lions and stuff. So they have to be really smart where they place their shelter. So that was really interesting to watch on Alone. I found that pretty interesting. Um, so, anyways, let's say they get their 12 final contestants. They start off with 12 people. And what's funny is a lot of them had different strategy. Like one of them was a bushcrafter. I believe Cold Cracker Bushcraft was one of the YouTube people that got to make it to on the season of Alone. Another YouTuber that got to make it on the season alone was Joe Robinette Bushcraft. He got to make it on the season of Alone. And so, um, since I'm into bushcrafting, I really watch them carefully uh, how they did how they set up their camps and stuff. Especially since those two guys are into bushcrafting, Joe Robinette Bushcraft and Cold Cracker Bushcraft. So it was really interesting. Now, Cold Cracker Bushcraft, he had he of course he had bushcraft experience, but he also had hunting and trapping experience. And then in the case of Joe Robinette, he had bushcrafting experience, and it was really cool. I kind of felt sorry for Joe Robinette because I mean, he had a real neat experience on Alone when I think he came across some wildlife. I think he came across a black bear, and uh, it was really cool. He um, he let the black bear know he was in the area. Uh, I think the black bear was on the other side of the river, but that was cool. But what was such a bummer is uh, he had his camp all set up, and uh, uh, anyways, he had his camp all set up, and he had his ferro rod, and he lost his ferro rod. And the ferro rod I just showed you guys, this one here, it's orange, but I guess the ferro rod he had no bright colors on it at all. It was just a ferro rod, and I think maybe a black string, but no bright colors. So when he lost his ferro rod, and I think he kind of lost it, he's kind of digging out some kind of pit. I don't know. I don't know why he was digging out a pit, but anyways, he lost his ferro rod, and I think on the season he was on, eventually it was going to get colder. So what ended up knocking him out is, um, since he felt his ability to make campfire wasn't going to happen, I think that's what made him press that button for rescue to take him off Alone show. But then I think he was hoping to do it again. So I don't know. I'll have to try and catch up on the series to see if he ever got to come back. But I felt sad for him because I knew I felt sad for Joe Robinette because I knew he wanted to stay out longer there on the show Alone. Now the other guy, Coalcracker Bushcraft, um, he built a pretty good sized shelter, and he also had no problem trapping and catching game, and so. So I think the only thing that got him to leave is he started missing his friends and family a whole lot. He had stayed out there for quite a lot of days. I want to say he stayed out there over a month, if I remember correctly. He might have stayed out in the wilderness for about a month, and he started really. It might have been longer. I can't remember. Might have been more than. Actually, it might have been over 2 months that he stayed out in the wilderness. And anyways, Coalcracker Bushcraft felt he achieved what he wanted to. So his was more due to really missing his family. So he went and grabbed, it almost looks like a walkie-talkie, and he pressed that button for his rescue. And I mean, he had plenty of shelter, he had plenty of food. He just simply was missing his family too much. And of course, that's why they called the show Alone, because you're literally alone. And then, anyways, those people that did qualify, I think they could only pick 10 or 12 items with them. And yeah, you can only pick 10 or 12 survival items with you when you went on Alone. And then the other thing they showed them, they gave them lots of, they showed them how to work lots of different cameras there. So here you've made it through Alone. You've showed all the tasks of building shelter, fire, and trapping, and collecting wild animals. And now, on top of that, they're showing you how to use all these different cameras. And but what's wild, they did get used to building all kinds of different cameras, which was really cool. But like I said, it's really neat to watch Alone because you see a variety of people on Alone. Another one I think was a woodsman guy who basically was kind of like a mountain man guy, but he felt very comfortable in the woods, and he was just really enjoying his time out there. But what knocked him out was, and once again, he was a woodsman guy, he set up a pretty large camp. He kind of set up his tarp like this, at this angle here, and it was up against a really large set of tree areas, but it was a really large camp. So the volume of the campfire you had to make would be pretty big. And then he had to travel a lot to gather his wood and then travel back to his camp. And so that was the woods, kind of the woodsman mountain guy that did that. And the only problem about his shelter was, uh, one, it was probably close to the river too much, probably close to the river. And then two, it was such a large shelter that it needed quite a lot of wood to make that shelter really, really warm. And the temperature was about to change too. The climate there in that area where they were doing it. It's so funny. Uh, they put them in these climates, and it seems like the first month is pretty cool. The weather's cooperating, right? It's real nice. And then around the second month, especially if they're in a region that starts to get snow or like heavy snow, then the second month gets tougher because now you got to hope your shelter's keeping you plenty warm enough because it's starting to snow and get really cold. And then um, the third month, things really kind of freeze up and it gets harder and harder to trap small game, and it gets harder to find wild edibles. So basically, as it goes along, the longer you're out there, and of course, the longer the extreme weather changes, it gets tougher and tougher to stay out there. And you get to watch these people alone deal with that. So, yeah, camp setup was the topic I wanted to talk about, and alone covers that. Of course, when they first drop off these contestants of alone, their their reactions are interesting. Like one lady's reaction is she was ecstatic and that she was glad she was going to get to test herself. So she was super, super happy. So that was one lady's reaction on alone. That what's funny is they fly him in with a helicopter, and each 12 of these people are dropped off at a location. They're probably all 12 people are miles and miles away from each other. So they really are alone when they drop them off in the wilderness. And so they really feel the seclusion, and you can really feel how they feel, especially when the helicopter drops them off and the helicopter leaves. And then when they can't see the helicopter anymore, all they hear is the sounds of nature. And then they have to establish really quick where they're going to put their camp at. So this one lady's reaction was cool. She was ecstatic. She was glad to be out there. And I think she was the wild edibles person who had a lot of wild edibles knowledge. So she was ecstatic to be out there in the wilderness. Um, a few of the guy contestants of Alone had other different reactions. One of them was ecstatic to be out there. And then the other two, I think, said, "Oh shit, I think I've made a mistake." This is after they saw the helicopter leave and they were dropped off and they realized they were in the wilderness. Um, so it's interesting to see the reaction. So, and like I said, I'm watching it. I'm watching the TV show Alone, wondering how I would react if I made it onto that show. What 10 or 12 items would I try to bring uh, in that survival situation? A lot of them brought. So let's try to count off. Let's just make it simple. Let's say they're allowed to bring 10 items. Okay. So I probably would bring a knife, and then I'd probably bring a tarp. And what else would I bring? Maybe a first aid kit. Maybe a fishing item, a sleeping bag, sleeping pad. What else could I bring? Maybe a hatchet, a small hatchet, a saw, and what else? Maybe a sewing kit, and then maybe maybe a ferro rod. So as you see, it mounts up pretty quick when picking 10 or 12 items, and then those are set in stone. Those are the 12 items you're going to have the whole time you're out there. I think the first person who won Alone, um, his style of shelter building was really, really cool. It was like it was this. So that's the style. The first person who won alone. This was the shelter that they built. And what's really cool about this shelter is he was able to keep it warm easier. And I think that uh, so that style shelter, it's like this. It's really low to the ground, and then of course, you put all the sticks up. So that style shelter, I want to show that off again. Here we go. So anyways, that style of shelter, you put your sticks up first, and then you put all these leaves and debris on top. Some of this debris right here are leaves and also moss. So you see they're gathering up large passes of moss and leaves, and they put it on top of this kind of structure right here. And the kind of structure they call that is, yeah, it's called a debris hut. That's a simple name, a debris hut. And like I said, the material here is leaves and moss. And since it's a smaller structure, and he was a big guy, so he made this smaller structure really close to the ground. And then once he had all of his walls set up for that structure, so it's kind of an A-frame structure, but it starts out really small at the bottom, and then when it gets close to the door, it expands out. But he keeps it low to the ground, and he gathered up moss and leaves, and those were the sides of his walls, was the moss and leaves. And then he pushed on the floor of his shelter, he pushed more leaves and stuff, which was really cool. So that was super cool. The structure's like this. It's super small. Starts out small at the bottom, and then it works its way up and gets larger and larger, the A-frame part of the shelter. And like I said, he was a really big guy, and he built his shelter really close to the ground. Once he had his walls up, he started pushing as many leaves as he could inside. So that way, when he went to go fall asleep at night, uh, let's say he stacked up leaves about this much, so when his body laid on it, it at least he was still kept off the ground, because your body's gonna, once you lay down in those leaves inside your shelter, it's gonna push it down. So he still had a nice, he put a lot of leaves, so that way when his body compressed the leaves down, he still wasn't laying directly on the ground. But anyways, that small shelter for that really large dude worked out good, because um, yeah, and once again, that shelter is called a debris shelter. And like I said, it worked for him. I mean, he won the thing alone. But so yeah, he built a really good shelter, but he kept it small, and therefore he did. It definitely was a real survival shelter, that one. Um, Another person took a totally different approach. I think it was one of the female contestants on Alone. She built almost like and that's why you got to watch Alone, because each men and women had different ideas for their shelter. In the case of this lady, she wanted to make a shelter really feel like a home, almost like a cabin like. And uh, she got lots of stones. So one of the first things, I think, well, first she made the structure. A lot of her structure was tarp. So she uh, she threw up this large tarp, and then she also made this huge stone fireplace. And so that was different. But the only bad thing about that shelter, it was really, really large. And that means she would have had to keep acquiring wood to keep that shelter warm. But she was out there a long time, and she was able to get plenty of wood to keep that shelter warm. Um, so yeah, the first set of shows that Alone produced, it was 12 people, 12 people who had qualified, and then all 12 people filmed themselves while they were surviving out in the wilderness. And the ones that stayed really long had lots of success catching fish. And then, so yeah, a lot of them that lasted really long on the show alone. They were able to trap small game, and they also were able to catch lots of fish, and that's why they were able to survive out there long. One of the people that did catch plenty of fish, he dried his fish, but he was only eating half of what he caught, and he was drying up the other thing. And his idea wasn't a bad idea, because he thought there's going to come a time where it's going to be harder to catch fish less and less. So his idea wasn't bad. The only thing is he wasn't taking in enough calories. And then what ended up happening is they do these medical checks. And like I said, sometimes there's like 2 or 3 of them left, and they're on their second or third month. And you can't lose, while they're doing these medical checks on you on a loan, you can't lose too much weight. If you actually lose too much weight, that can get you booted off the TV show alone. So, but the contestants were made aware of that could happen to them. And in the case of the guy who had stored up so much dried fish, they had to give him the sad news that he had lost too much weight. And the bad thing, these contestants don't have mirrors in front of them. And I think that happened to a girl too. One of the ladies on Alone had lost too much weight. And what's funny is she was very small to begin with, so she didn't really have much weight to lose anyways. So yeah, one of the ladies lost too much weight on Alone, and then one of the guys lost too much weight on Alone. And so it was so that was kind of sad, because I think both of them had almost been out there for almost 3 months. So yeah, first they drop them off. They're looking around, and then they realize, for some of you that are coming in late, I'm talking about the TV show No Alone, where 12 people qualify to be on the show. And yeah, it's basically a survival show called Alone. And they all these men and women have different reactions when they're dropped off on Alone. And yeah, it's really cool. The majority of the contestants on Alone, like one of the guys that was the first people to win Alone, I think he was out there for more than 3 months. And what's funny is they don't know, especially the people who've won Alone, they have no idea that, I mean, they know they have to outlast the other people, but they have no idea whether the other people are successful catching fish or trapping, or whether they built a successful shelter. All they know is what they're doing on their own journey while filming their journey of being on Alone. So what's wild is there's a few things that end up getting people to press that emergency button. It's like a walkie-talkie. So there's a few things. Pretend this is a walkie-talkie. So they know they have this. They got they got all the filming equipment with them to record Alone. But they also know they have this radio that at any time they can press the button for rescue. And the majority of people, it really got to them spending too much time alone out in the wilderness, which is funny because that's the title of the TV show, called Alone. And so the majority of them really started missing their significant other and friends and family. So that's what would get them to press this button. And then the other thing that would kick some of them off, some of them, since the climate really changed, and around the 3rd month, they had maybe they weren't able to catch fish every day as often they got used to, or they weren't able to trap small game with these really small traps. And so so that's what ended up getting them to press that button. If they couldn't catch small game or if they couldn't catch fish anymore, and they started to realize they weren't getting enough food, that's what would get them to press that button for rescue. And of course, once they press that button, they they're literally holding up the walkie-talkie. Hey, what you got going on? I think one person had a medical emergency. One person wasn't watching how they were cutting the wood, and they kind of cut their hand a little too deep. So one person pressed that button for rescue because they felt the cut on their hand was too deep. And then, of course, the majority of them pressed that button because they just simply miss their friends and family too much. But anyways, one of the people that won, one of the guys that won the Alone contest, I think he was out there for over 3 months out in the wilderness by himself. He's the one that built that really, really small shelter, which he was able to keep himself warm. Um, it was funny how he would try to get his mind off of being alone out there and filming himself the whole time. Um, he would he would kind of recall different books he had read while he was out there being alone, and it was really cool. He tried to get his mind off of being out there alone the whole time. So sometimes he would sing a little bit while he was in his shelter before he went to bed at night. And so lots of the different contestants of Alone did. I mean, yes, they're in a survival situation, but what's kind of unique in their survival situation, they know they have this radio where they know they have this walkie-talkie where they can press the button and rescue's coming. So, but like I said, one of the big things, which is one of the topics I wanted to follow on, is the first topic that I wanted to talk about in this live stream was where to set up your camp. And of course, I'm trying to place myself in their position. And then this book right here, Bushcraft 101, it's a field guide to the art of wilderness survival. And it's got it goes over talking about cutting tools, building fire, the importance of cordage, wild edibles, and the different types of wood trees you would deal with out in the wilderness. So that's what Bushcraft 101 covers. And it's got different tarp setups and also what kind of things you do out with nature. So shelter definitely was a big deal on the thing Alone. Some people built too big of shelters where you got to constantly get more and more wood. So I noticed the people with the smaller shelters had even though they didn't have as much move around, it, they spent less energy trying to keep their shelter warm. And then the people who built these really big shelters, I think the reason they were doing that, they were thinking of long term, I guess, and comfortability. So they built these really big shelters. Bad thing about it, it's really hard to keep those shelters warm. But like I said, the real big guy, it's so funny seeing this real big guy build this smaller shelter. But the cool thing about that was he didn't have to try as hard to keep it so warm because it was a small debris shelter. And then the other people were trying to build like kind of small like cabins out there. But the only bad thing about those, I mean, yes, you got plenty of room to move around, but you just don't have. You got to expend more energy to keep that warm. And then one of the other guys that was out there, he built like a teepee-like structure, wood structure, and then wrapped his tarp around. But he kept getting frustrated because small animals and mouses kept coming to his structure. I guess kept waking him up at night. So it was wild to see this poor dude get frustrated by all the little critters that were bothering him. I think that might have been on Patagonia where they were staying. I think they were filming in Patagonia. But it was wild to see this guy get so frustrated with the with the little critters that was coming to his place. But like I said, the people that seemed to fare the best were the ones who built the smaller debris shelters. But like I said, I'd be watching the show alone and placing myself in their position. And what's wild is a lot of these people are kind of experts in their field. Like the guy who actually won it, he was actually a survival instructor. And then, after he finished alone, it definitely helped his business because he still teaches survival skills. Now, the mountain man, it was interesting to watch his experience. He got tired of traveling to gather all these pieces of wood. The guy that built he set up a tarp near a really, really, really tall tree structure, but he set it up really, really large. And it was I felt it was a little kind of too close to the river. But he got tired of traveling to go gather up all this wood, so he made the mistake of moving his camp. And unfortunately, the second campsite where he chose was even closer to the river. And I think he woke up in the middle of the night. The way the water moves on the river, I guess this tide, with his second camp choice, the tide came in too much, and it just totally got all of his camp really, really wet. So, yeah, that's not good. It got all this stuff wet. So he made the mistake of moving to a second campsite. Now, another guy, he felt his campsite was kind of low, so he decided to go to a little bit higher ground. And that second campsite was a good choice because he ended up catching and trapping small game a lot easier. So, yeah, definitely. Anyways, what I've learned from this book here, the Bushcraft 101, especially when you go, and I'm going to touch on a few of the points that they talk about. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about. And here's a few things they talk about. And once again, this is chapter 7, called Setting Up Camp. I touched on a few of the shelters, and like I said, the one big giant guy, I was really shocked he made a small shelter, and he made a debris shelter, which is really, really cool. And the nice thing about it was small, and he was able to keep that shelter, he had no problem keeping that shelter warm at night. So in this one, it says, how long do you intend to stay? Are you only stopping for a quick lunch or a break? Are you staying only one night then, and then the morning move on? Or do you intend to make a base camp, which to work for several days? Let me see if there's other suggestions. Any camp you choose as a base camp for an extended period will need to be thought out more carefully because of the eventual depletion of close resources. And some of those resources would be food, water, wind, and widow makers. Now, widow makers are interesting. A lot of bushcrafters and campers know about widow makers. And basically, when you go to set up your tarp or tent, you're looking up at the, particularly if you're in the woods, you look up above, there's usually a canopy of trees. And what you're looking for, the things that are called widow makers, you're looking for kind of standing trees that are kind of too old. And do they have a lot of branches over in an area that you're thinking about setting up a tent or a tarp to stay for the night? if you look at some trees and if some of them look too old, the limbs may come down and actually hit you hit you in the head while you're sleeping in your tent or tarp, and the reason they call it widowmaker is because it could kill you. So so yeah, wherever you set up your tent or tarp, it's very important to look up, especially if you're in the woods. You definitely want to look up, and you want to make sure all the trees are pretty healthy where you're going to set your tent and tarp. So that, yeah. And a lot of people may not think about that. They may see a real nice area that's really flat and may forget to look up to see if there's any widow makers up there, which means are there any old tree limbs that are hanging above your tree tent or tarp? If so, you need to pick a different location to set up your tent or tarp. So now the water resources where you go gather your water, a lot of them, especially on the show alone, a lot of them had to go look to find out how far each of their water sources were. In some cases, their water sources wasn't far because they were near a lake or a river. And in a lot of cases, a lot of them had to build a campfire and then they had to boil their water in order to create drinking water. Of course, when it snowed, like in the second month in some of the areas on alone, it started to snow. And so what they do, they would take their cup or canteen and they would scoop it up. And usually it was a stainless steel cup or stainless steel canteen. And then they would place that, basically they would melt that snow in their steel canteen or steel cup, and they'd place that on the fire and they'd melt their snow, basically boil their snow and create drinking water, which is cool. And yeah, that's a survival tactic, gathering up either snow from your mental canteen and you boil the water. So yeah, regardless of where, especially if you're in the outdoors and but what's neat is they have a lot of tools out there now, which I don't know. I don't think they would let you bring that on alone. They have a lot of these filters where you can scoop up the water and you place the thing at the top already has a filter. And as far as I know, I don't think they let them bring those on alone. You actually had to boil your water to get safe drinking water. So, yeah, even if you're outdoors and the water looks crystal clear, looks healthy to drink, you definitely should still boil your water over a campfire. And yeah, and I got to see them do that a lot on alone. These are from the store. They're not wild edibles. It was really cool on alone. Like the first month, they were able to find wild edibles. And so, yeah, that was some of their food source. They would find wild edibles. I think some of them found like berries. Of course, this is a strawberry. Some of them found like blueberries wildly growing on bushes. But that, as the weather changed in the second month, the wild edibles started getting smaller and smaller to find while they were outdoors. And that's another thing you'll see on the show alone. In the case of where they were filming in Patagonia, the edibles got smaller and smaller to find. And also, whatever style of shelter they decided to build, especially as the second month went in and the snow set in and the ice came, then what they decided to build as a shelter became more and more important. And like I said, the smaller the shelter, the easier it was to keep that shelter warm. And then in the case of the very first guy who won the very first alone, he built a really small debris shelter. And it was so funny because he was a really, really big guy. And then they had other contestants that weren't big that built really large structures that they had to spend a lot of money, not a lot of money, they had to spend a lot of time trying to gather wood to keep these large shelters warm. The bushcrafter guy, Coal Cracker Bushcraft, his his strategy was really, really interesting. He I think he just set up a tarp, and his plan was to spend as less energy as possible, because all he knew, or he felt all he had to do is outlast the other people that were competing against him on a loan. So he didn't spend a lot of time building his shelter because he mainly just set up a quick tarp. So when he was filming himself, there was a lot of times where he was relaxing. So his, yeah. But what ended up knocking him out is he felt he achieved his goals, because I think he stayed there for almost, I think it was just under 3 months. But he felt he achieved what he wanted to, so he went ahead and pressed that button for rescue. But I would have loved to see him stay out there longer, because it would have been interesting to see what he would have done out there. That would have been really interesting for sure. But yeah, from what I gather, and this book once again is written by Dave Canterbury. It's called Bushcraft 101, a field guide to the art of wilderness survival. So yeah, when I place myself in their position, one of the things I think I'd want to do is, I think I definitely would want to do the debris shelter, the small debris shelter, which is almost set up in an A-frame style. That would be, I think that'd be the route I would go. I'd want to set up an A-frame style shelter, debris shelter. And that way, the nice thing about a debris shelter, it sits really, really low to the ground. Like, here, I'm going to put down my bowl of fruit. It starts off, and there's a picture of it here. It starts off really, really small. And like I said, it's one of my favorite kind of shelters to do. Let me show you. Oh, there it is. So that's what the debris shelter looks like. And this is like I said, the guy was really, really big. He looks like he was over 6 feet tall. And he won one of the first Alone shows. And I think he was out there for a little over 3 months. And his loved one went and came and said his wife went, he thought he was getting his regular medical checkup, and he had no idea his wife was going to walk behind him. Once he saw his wife, he couldn't believe that the other contestants had quit and pressed that button for rescue. And of course, he got really emotional and he hugged his wife, and then he got to go show his small debris shelter he made. What's funny is how he was taking care of his hygiene. He was brushing his teeth every day, of course, but he was, some of their toothbrushing was funny. Some of them used, I think one, it almost looked like a coal kind of substance that they brushed their teeth with. I don't know if I would have done that, but anyways, he would jump in the river and, would clean up that way every day. Or I don't know if he did it in the evening before he went to bed, go take a bath in the river or the lake. So he did that daily. And one of the things he noticed by staying out there for a little over 3 months is all the stuff we think we need, or all the stuff we human beings think they need. Maybe we don't need as much as we think we need. And so that's what that's the thoughts he had for being out there a little over 3 months. But I think the other thought he got, the guy who went alone, was one was the appreciation of everything he does have in his life, all the small amenities and stuff that you have when you're in your own home, compared to staying out there out in the wilderness of alone. But yeah, if you guys haven't seen that show, you need to go to the History Channel and check out the series. There's lots of different seasons of Alone, and it's really worth it because you get to see men and women who, and part of the reason they go on the TV show Alone, it's a mixture of them. Like I said, one lady knew how to do wild edibles and how to build shelter. Another lady was like a wilderness kind of lady, and some of the men were like wilderness kind of men. And then some of them were survival instructors, and then another men and women were hunters. So they had wilderness people, survivalists, bushcrafters, hunters, and also people who eat wild edibles out there, practicing their skills on Alone. So I would love to do Alone. That'd be cool. I have to really think about that if I ever try to give my stab at that show to go on Alone. I think it would be pretty wild to go on the TV show Alone. If I ever do, you guys will know. Oh, yeah, that would be a whole new YouTube video, because a lot of them do that. I think before you go do the tryouts for Alone, you make a small video showing you're able to build shelter, fire, and how would you trap different small games to eat. So this book also goes over the different ways you would trap small game. It also shows larger traps for larger game. It even talks about how to process game that you catch out in the wilderness. And it talks about how to build all kinds of shelters and how to set up camps and tarps. It even shows how to do various different knots, of course, you would use to build your shelter. And then, like the name says, Bushcraft 101, the field guide to the art of wilderness survival. So, and so far in this live stream, I've touched on the 3 areas I wanted to talk. The third area I've not touched on. I've touched on it a little bit. Once again, I welcomed everyone to the live stream when I started it. But then I talked about my 3 topics I wanted to cover. The first one was where to build your campsite. The second one was... the second one was where to build your campsite. The second one was talking about the show Alone, the TV show Alone. And then the third topic was bush recipes. Bush recipes is the third topic I'm going to touch on. And I actually should probably start touching on it now. So camp setup mainly. I'll go ahead and go over the other 2 topics first that I've already covered in the live stream. Basically, it's really important where you do set up your camp, and like in the case of a lot of the people Alone, they try not to eat like wherever they set up their shelter to survive for the next 2 or 3 months. They tried not to eat near their camp. They tried to eat away from their camp. And part of the reason they were doing that, I can't remember the various different animals they had to deal with in Patagonia, but in some of the different locations, because some of them were in Canada, some of them were in Patagonia, but in some cases they had to deal with wolves or coyotes or they had to deal with bears or large moose. And then I think another area they had to worry about mountain lions. But so wherever you set your camp up, that's the place where you're going to sleep every night and try to stay warm every night. And then, like I said, when you do, and you definitely want to process your game way like miles away from your camp. You don't want to process game because that can bring the smell of game can bring bears and probably wolves and coyotes to come smell around your camp. A large moose, I'm sure they can smell the food as well. So, yeah, wherever you put your camp, you want to put it. And you also don't want to put your camp too close to the body of water where you're getting your water every day. And of course, while you're getting the water from a lake or stream, or you want to try and catch water that's constantly running, especially if you're near a small stream. You want to you want to have a container that you can easily boil water in. So of course you're dipping that in, catching the water that's running. And regardless of how the water looks, even if it looks crystal clear, you still got to set it on a campfire and boil it for healthy water. Because when you boil it, I definitely would try to boil it for at least, you could probably boil it in less under an hour, but just to be sure, I'd boil it for about an hour. I just can't remember offhand how long you have to boil it. But anyways, you got to boil your water, then set it, and then let it cool off. But anyways, you got to make sure you're not putting your camp close to any body of water, because eventually the shoreline can move on you and it could end up flooding your whole camp. So basically, don't build a camp too close to water. If you're in the woods, you have to look up to make sure there's no dead. You have to look around the area, especially if you're in the woods setting up a tarp or a camp. Make sure you look up to make sure there's no old limbs that could fall down on your tent or tarp. And then, yeah, you're usually good to go. If you got pretty good trees around you in the woods and none of them look like widow makers, then it's okay to set up a tent or tarp. You do have to decide how far you want to travel from your water resources, and also where are your woods resources that can help you set up a campfire and also help build a shelter. So where you set up your camp is very important. And also the other place that you're setting up is where you process your game, which you want it to be at least a mile or 2 miles away from your campsite, wherever you process your game. And then, of course, I would say wherever you're processing your game, go ahead and set up a secondary campfire there to cook your whatever small game you got, chipmunk, squirrel. So yeah, whatever thing you trapped, you're gonna have that at another site 2 or 3 miles away from your campsite. So that way you're safe. Because like I said, a lot of the food you're going to process could attract animals. So you want that 2 or 3 miles away from your campsite where you sleep every night. So that way you're not attracting the wolves or the bears or raccoons or any kind of animal that's trying to scrounge for food at night. And a lot of them probably do come out around night, once the sun goes down. And then the cool thing about you processing food so far away from your camp, the animals are more drawn towards that and not drawn towards your campsite where you fall asleep every night. And what's funny, watching the TV show alone actually drove that home, because a set of black bears came into this one guy's camp, and basically these 2 black bears were just trying to find food. And this guy made a lot of noise. It scared the crap out of him because he could hear the 2 black bears outside his tarp. But he made a lot of noise, and eventually the 2 black bears just went away. I'm not sure why those 2 black bears did come into his camp. I can't remember offhand whether he was processing any food at his campsite or I can't remember if he ate at his campsite. But something attracted those two black bears to come to his camp and come smell around his tarp. So if I had to guess, he may have been eating a little bit at his campsite, which he probably shouldn't. He probably should have picked a different location to eat and process his food and then come back to his campsite. So, yeah, that secondary site where you're processing your food and also cooking your food and eating it there at the secondary site, at least that way, the cool thing about that, it could attract the animals away from your camp, which is good because that's where you're going to go fall asleep every night. So, um, one of the people, uh, like I said, not everyone made a small debris shelter when they were on alone. This one person, two people, um, they built a circular structure, and I can't think of the name offhand. Anyways, it's a large circular structure, and then a lot of them picked a lot of sticks, pointy sticks around their whole structure, and I think that was to give them the feeling of safety. But that shelter also looked like it would take a lot to heat up and stay warm in. But but yeah, that was real interesting. The people that did that broke out the pointy sticks, and they placed that all around their shelter. And once again, I think they did that mainly to feel a sense of security. And once again, that was a round structure, and I can't think of it. Oh, it's a yurt. That's the name of the structure. It's a large circle structure, and it's called a yurt. And I'm not going to say they built large yurt structure. And like I said, it's set up in a really large. Sometimes you can set yurts, and you can build small yurts. So I want to say they were small to medium yurts that each one of these other contestants built. But my favorite, especially if you're trying to survive for 2 or 3 months, my favorite kind of shelter. The yurts were cool because you had more room to move around in your shelter. But I really liked the debris shelter because it definitely was more of a survival shelter. And it looked like it took less resources in the evening time to stay warm in that debris shelter. So, but I will say this: one of the guys that did build a small to medium sized yurt structure, that guy did win one of the other seasons of Alone, and so he caught plenty of fish. Um, but I think the thing that was kind of getting to him is he was missing his family, but he hung in there. He uh, I should have picked up these people's names before I made this live stream. Two of the guys that had won the Alone show. I think in both cases, both dudes stayed out in the wilderness by themselves for a little over 3 months. But and what I gathered from both guys that stayed out there for a little over 3 months, that us human beings are really social creatures, and we really aren't built to always stay for long periods of our time by ourselves out in the wilderness. Human beings really are social creatures. And what's neat, the contestants of Alone really feel that it's not living out in the wilderness like a hermit is not what it's all cracked up to be. Sometimes can be romanticized, but um, yeah, sometimes that can be romanticized a little too much about being a hermit and being out in nature and become one with nature. Sometimes that can get real romanticized. You can see that romanticized get over really quick when you're watching the contestants on Alone on the History Channel. So that kind of blows that out of the sky. The romanticizing about becoming one with nature and um, but yeah, it's yeah, I'll definitely let you guys know if I ever do something like that. I think that would really surprise my family, especially if I qualified to come on the TV show Alone. Um, I think it would be an experience I would never forget. That'd be sure. That'd be cool, and it would be kind of cool to see how long I could make it out there. You know, I think I would surprise my family if I made it on. One, if I made it onto the TV show Alone, and I think the other thing that would surprise them would be how long I stayed out there. Would surprise my little family. So, and I think my goal would be, especially if I made it onto the TV show Alone, one of my goals would be to to at least try to make it there for 3 months. That would be cool. Uh, but knowing, and I would, and probably my, it would be nice to make a small yurt and be comfortable and have a pretty big enough fireplace in that shelter. But knowing that the debris shelter, even though it's a smaller shelter, would be more easier to probably maintain and probably to stay warm at night. So I think it would be a tough call between the small yurt shelter and the small debris shelter. So who knows? You have a lot of time to spend when you're out there on alone. Actually, I take that back. In the case of Patagonia, if I remember correctly, the Patagonia, when they were testing their outdoor skills in Patagonia. Oh, the other cool thing they did in Patagonia, they got to meet with the local native people of Patagonia. And some of the native people passed on some skills to these outdoor peoples on alone before they went out. Oh, there was one animal they were not allowed to eat out there or trap. I think it was some kind of rare deer. If I remember right, it was some kind of rare small deer that they were not allowed to hunt because I think that small deer was protected in Patagonia, if I remember right. I might be remembering that wrong. But in some of the other places, like there were other places that they filmed in, which was in Patagonia. I can't remember if it was in Alaska or Canada. There was another place they were filming the show Alone where they were allowed to hunt deer. And one of the contestants was allowed to bring a hunting bow with him. And it looked like a traditional longbow that he had. And my God, if that person, and what's neat about that is he got to compete again. Some of the people who've come on the show Alone have got to join a second Alone show for a second try at it, and one of them was a hunter. And he set up a really cool hunting stand in the trees, and he was trying to he was trying to land a deer, and if that dude had been able to do that, he probably would have processed that deer, and then he probably would have made some deer jerky, probably would have dried up the deer meat. Uh, and the reason I know he could probably do that is because he dried plenty of fish the first time he was on Alone. But like I said, he got to compete a second time. He was a survival instructor, and it was really neat. I'd never seen anyone dry up fish. And he set up this really tall drying rack, and he it almost looked like he made fish jerky, but he dried up this fish meat, which was pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna jump on the last topic I wanted to jump on, and what gave me the idea to even throw this topic in here was I saw Panoy Ahoy. I saw Panoy Ahoy. Panoy Ahoy had ate the balut, And he did good. Congratulations to Panoy Hoy on eating the balut. That balut, that balut almost looks like a survival item. It's pretty funny. But he did a good job, Panoy Hoy, eating the balut. I teased a few people saying I would trade my balut for a round. I would trade my balut for a round chocolate truffle, dark chocolate truffle. That's what I would trade my balut for. For those of you who may not know what balut is, it's a duck egg. And it looks like a duck egg that's not very old. And as you peel it, you can see the duck in there. And sure enough, Panoy grabbed. And what's funny is when he did eat his balut, I didn't get to watch it live. I got to watch it after the fact. I got to click on Panoy Hoy's video. And I think he was asking his wife to make sure the duck egg was at the right angle to start. He wanted to make sure he peeled the correct top angle of the duck egg, and they call it balut. I think it's a specialty in the Philippines. The balut is. Anyways, he peels this duck egg, and before he pulls it out, you can see the head and the two eyes. It was kind of wild. He ended up eating two balut eggs, two of these small duck eggs, and it looked like a little tiny black duck that he pulled each balut out. I think the first balut was a younger looking balut, and he ate the little bird first, and he ate that just fine. Oh, and before he pulled the small duck out of the balut, he he peeled enough of the top of the duck egg where he got to drink the juices, and he said the juices were pretty good. He said it didn't smell very good. The balut didn't. The duck egg. But he did complete his channel successfully. So congrats on completing the balut challenge, Panoy Hoy. Yeah, he ate the bird first, and then he ate the yellow part, and then he ate the hard white stuff. What he said, it was almost like chewing rubber. But yeah, that $300 got donated to charity. I don't know what charity he got to pick, but it was fun watching that. But anyway, seeing Panoy Hoy eat that balut made me think of, and once again, this is the Bushcraft 101 book, A Field Guide to the Art of Wilderness Survival. By seeing Panoy Hoy eat that balut, I wanted to switch to Appendix C, and it's called Bush Recipes. And so I was going to share with you guys a little bit of the bush recipes here because I found that interesting. Oh, cool. So one's called hardtack and basic bannock. And it's got the recipes for, and I want to say the basic bannock is almost like making a fresh bread. So the first two items talk about how to make a fresh bread. In the case of basic I think I may be pronouncing that wrong. Basic bannock, and if I don't, bannock, basic bannock, if I'm not mistaken, is like it almost looks kind of like a bread biscuit. It says 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 tablespoon salt, 1 cup of dry milk powder, 1 tablespoon of shortening, oil for frying, and water as needed. Make the mix home ahead of time. Oh, you'll make this mix home ahead of time. And then you'll sift the dry ingredients together into a large bowl. Cut the shortening until you have a triangular or cornmeal-like mixture. Package this mix in a Ziploc freezer bag. Double bag it if you're going to be on a long trip. Start with a small cast iron or stainless steel frying pan. Oil it well, and you can also use hardwood plank. Pour approximately 1/4 cup of water into the bag and squeeze to mix. Squeeze the mix out of the bag into the warm pan or onto a plank. Says your bannock will start to look like a loaf-like. It says your bannock, so I was right. It is like a bread. Your bannock will start to look loaf-like in about 10 to 12 minutes. That ain't too bad, so it cooks pretty fast. And depending on the heat level of the burner, at this point you'll want to flip your loaf. You'll flip your loaf over and check for finished product. Take a toothpick, poke the loaf, and it comes out dry. It is done. And if it comes out moist or with goo on it, let it cook some more. So bannock is like a it's like a bread you can make. So that's pretty cool. And I've actually seen people make that outdoors. So bannock's kind of cool. So that's a cool recipe. All right. Here's another recipe. It says it's for squirrel. So it's for squirrel or rabbit. And it's so funny. I got a story that I can tell you. I got a really cool story from Peru as far as rabbit. But in this wilderness survival book, it shows you how to cook squirrel or rabbit. Anyways, my story is from Peru. I was walking in my mother-in-law's kitchen. This is when I got to stay in Peru for about a month. I walked into my mother-in-law's kitchen, and hanging on, whenever you go to an outdoor Peruvian market, they leave the tails on the animals, so you know what animal you're buying. In this case, my wife's aunt was buying rabbit, and the way they say rabbit in Spanish is conejo. So she was about to process this rabbit. And the rabbit had already been skinned. Since she bought it at the market, this rabbit had already been skinned. And so anyways, my wife's aunt's processing this rabbit. And the skin's already been taken off. But what they do is they leave the on all the animals that are sold in the markets in Peru, in the live market in Peru. They leave the tails on the animal so you know what animal you're buying. In this case, my wife's aunt was buying rabbit. And so I saw this hanging on the kitchen. And I didn't stay in the kitchen, but she chopped this rabbit up into really small pieces. And then she fried it, right? So when she brought it out to the table, it looked like small fried pieces of chicken. And once again, I had never had rabbit, but in Peru, they call rabbit conejo. And man, I bit into this conejo. I bit into this rabbit that they'd fried up in this, and it did look like small pieces of chicken. Man, I bit into that rabbit, and in Peru, they call it conejo. And that rabbit tasted so good. And I've seen people cook small game outdoors. I don't think I've seen them fry it, but I've seen them grill their meat outdoors. Sometimes they're grilling a squirrel, or sometimes they're grilling a rabbit meat, or they're doing like a rotisserie style of cooking up wild game. So So yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, but yeah, the reason I brought up the third topic about these basic recipes because I thought of Ponoe Hoi when he was eating his balut. The other recipe is they have a recipe here for frog legs. So there are people that go, oh wow, there, and I guess frog legs, what I've been told, does taste like chicken. Frog legs does. I've never had frog legs, but so people could, yeah, you can catch frog legs in the wild and eat frog legs. Here's another recipe for boiled beaver. So that's the recipe for boiled beaver. Muskrat soup. Um, Man, I'd have to be really hungry to eat muskrat soup. Here's another recipe for raccoon stew. And once again, I'd have to be really hungry to eat raccoon stew. And here's another recipe for baked dove. Now, the baked dove probably would taste pretty good. I just wonder how much meat would be on a baked dove. Wow. Oh, look, and it does say if you get 12 to 24 dove breasts, that is approximately 1 pound. So you would have to catch 12 to 24 doves to get approximately 1 pound of baked dove breasts. So, yeah, because I didn't think doves were very big. So that's real interesting. And once again, if I was super hungry, I'd have to make sure I catch 12 to 24 of those doves just to get approximately 1 pound of dove meat. Oh, wow. Okay, here's another unique recipe for snapping turtle in a pot. So you're making a snapping turtle soup. So that's really interesting. Oh, okay. Here's one that says, it says jerky, all red meat and fish. So it's got a recipe how to turn all your red meat and fish into jerky, which is cool. And the neat thing about jerky is, and one of the people on the loan did that. They made lots of fish jerky. And I think their idea was once it got harder and harder to fish, or once like in the case of Patagonia, they had really nice weather the first month, so they were catching plenty of fish. So one of the contestants on the loan said, okay, I'm catching all this fish. I'm only going to eat half of it, and then the rest of the half I'm going to dry, so that when it gets harder and harder to catch fish, I'll still have food to. So basically, he was storing his food. And one of the cool ways to store food is to dry the meat. And it was really cool because he set up one of the contestants on the loan did set up a drying rack for all of his fish. Like I said, he was eating half the fish, but he was also drying up the other half. And that was such a cool idea because he was building himself, basically he was building himself a resource in case it got harder to catch fish once the winter came in. So that's super cool. The other thing that was easy during the first month of a loan, the other thing that was easy for people to get was wild edibles. So some people would pick their wild edible. The first month it would be easy because it was almost like, I don't know, it was almost like the end of spring in Patagonia. Oh, I took the back. It was almost like the end of fall in Patagonia, and there were still plenty of wild edibles available for people to eat. But then the second month, the snow started coming in. And I guess when winter comes in Patagonia, it comes pretty fast and furious. And once the winter set in Patagonia, it made it harder to catch fish. It made it harder to gather wild edibles. and therefore their time on alone became tougher and tougher as more winter-like weather uh, came in Patagonia. And of course, their wild edibles became less and less too. My favorite kind of jerky I got was at when I was in Brown County. I actually got to eat spicy buffalo jerky, and that was really, really good. All right. That was the very last recipe they had, which was the red meats, making jerky with red meat and fish. So that was cool. And like I said, that spicy buffalo jerky was really, really good. Super good. All right. So, yeah, I got to touch on all three of my topics, which was the where to place your camp at when being outdoors. And to go over that, you definitely uh, put your campsite not too far from the water resource, but you don't want to have it close to your too close because you don't want that body of water end up flooding your camp. So, but you want it reasonably. You don't want to have to travel too far to gather up your water because you're going to be needing to drink water every day. So if I was on the show alone, it would be a close call between the small debris shelter and the yurt-like structure. Of course, the yurt-like structure would give me more room to move around, but the debris shelter, I wouldn't need to set up a campfire every night if I was in a small debris shelter. Now, if I was in a small yurt, I'd have to make myself a campfire every night, which that wouldn't bother me because that would be giving me something to do every night. And that's one of the things both guys who won the show alone, both of them made sure they gave themselves plenty of task every day. Of course, their main task was trying to find food every day. Um, and one of them, um, all the contestants had to try to find uh, small edibles to eat every day. So basically, every morning they were getting up. Some of them were stoking their fires a little bit. Some of them probably already had water that was already boiled and ready to drink. So I imagine they're drinking a little bit of their water. And if they made any meat out of jerky, whether it was out of red meat or fish, maybe they ate a little bit of jerky, drank a little bit of water, and then they would go out. And some of the contestants would have traps already set out in the rivers and the ponds and lakes. So each morning, and I think one of them set up and this was one of the people that won alone. One of them set up I want to say 5 or 6 different traps out in the river, and they were fish traps. And so each morning they would check their fish traps, and there would be like 6 or 7 fish traps they would have already set up. And some days they would find 2 or 3 fish, and then some days they wouldn't find any fish. And then, of course, they were stoked whenever they found fish in their fish traps. And of course, they usually ended up processing it right there next to the river. And so what they'd do, they'd make a small campfire, and then they'd process their fish, and then they'd grill their fish over the fire. And then they would usually eat their fish right there. One of the other guys that won alone, I loved his strategy. He actually put on a little extra weight before going on alone, which I thought was really smart. Because you can get kicked off the show if you lose too much weight because they do these medical checks. So one guy's strategy worked out really well. I'm almost shocked that he won. He was a young guy. And like I said, he purposely, and what's funny, it was his second time being on alone. His first time, he ended up clicking the emergency button. The first time he was on alone, he built like a wood platform, and he set up his tarp almost to where it looked like a tent. But the bad thing about that is he had a really hard time keeping that structure warm every night, especially as the weather changed. And I think the only thing that got him to press that button for rescue is he just wasn't able to catch enough fish or small game. But the second time he went on alone, he did a really cool thing. He made sure he came on the show a little heavy, so that way if he had trouble getting any food, he wouldn't lose too much weight because he came in heavy already when starting alone, which I thought was a really smart strategy on his part. And like I said, he was a young guy. He purposely came in a little chubby while starting alone. And that strategy worked out for him because I want to say the first few days he was there, um, he wasn't successful at catching anything. And then he started catching some small game. But his strategy actually worked by coming in a few pounds heavy. Well, I don't think he came in a few pounds. He might have came in 10 pounds heavy. But like I said, he had been on the loan once before, but his second time around, he came in like a little over 10 pounds heavy for it. I can't remember exactly how many pounds of weight he was over, but he purposely put on pounds before he went on the loan for a second time. So, but yeah, that definitely presses people's survival mode. The being on alone, it definitely. Um, and like I said, it was so neat how each one of them approached their shelter build. Like the very first guy who won alone, his idea for a shelter was really, really basic. It was the debris shelter style. And I've showed that before earlier in the live, but I'll show it again. And what's so funny about him choosing that? Oh, here's the bow drill I was talking about. So when some of them were trying to do tryouts for a loan, they had to prove they could build a fire through the bow drill. So, and then the other way they were building a campfire is they were striking their ferro rod, which I think is a pretty. And here, yeah, here's the one of the first dudes to win a loan. He built a debris shelter like this. Like I said, it starts off really, really small here. Starts off really small and then it gets bigger and bigger as you go to the opening of your door. And then the stuff on top here is usually leaves or moss. It was really cool. And bark. Some of the contestants would peel off these bark. And so first you got all your sticks that are made up the skeleton of your shelter. And then they place these leaves and also bark and also moss, kind of using it as shingle on their small shelter. But yeah, I would be, if I was on the show alone, I'd be really tempted. I would think the easiest one to make would be the debris shelter, and that would be the less energy. So if I build a simple debris shelter on a loan, I'd be spending less energy on my shelter building. But I also have to think about there are wild animals. But the guy who built the debris shelter, he didn't have no trouble. If I remember correctly, I don't think that the large guy who built a debris shelter, I don't think he had trouble with any animals in the area. But and some of the contestants, when they did come across wildlife, some of them had some pretty good experience. One guy got the hell scale that scared out of him, though. It was late at night. He heard this one stick break at night, and it was two black bears that came into his camp. And here he is sitting in this small tarp shelter, and they can hear these two black bears just outside his camp. But he did make pretty loud noise, and the black bears went away. So, and then the other contestant, I think, could hear the sounds of a bobcat. And then another contestant could hear sounds of the coyotes. And then I think another contestant heard some sounds of wolves. So, so while you're sitting in your tent, or shelter, or if you're sitting in a debris shelter and you're hearing wolves outside, or you hear black bears outside your camp, that can make you a little nervous. But what's cool, the reason I'm glad I got to see that on Alone, the show Alone, the outdoor show, is it really stressed the importance of setting up two kind of, one, your base camp where you're going to sleep every night. And then you go set up a secondary thing that's like 2 or 3 miles away. And you're processing all your game, you're cooking all your food way anywhere 1 to 2 miles away from your camp. And then hopefully wherever you process your game and also wherever you cook your food that's 2 or 3 miles away from your camp, that hopefully that'll keep all the wild animals over there, because then they can smell that. And then that's cool. They can smell where you process your food or where you cook your food. And once again, where you process and cook your food is 2 or 3 miles away from where you camp and sleep every night. So, yeah, in Brown County, I don't have to worry about that. There's no bears in Brown County. Now, if I went and camped in Colorado, I would have a base camp, okay? Especially if I knew there were bears. There are bears in Denver, Colorado. When I was really small, my dad used to take me camping. I think he took me like 30 or 40 times camping when we lived in Colorado. And that's probably where I got my love of the outdoors. I know that's got to be, because I have these fond memories of my dad taking me camping in Denver, Colorado. So, but that's real camping. The camping I remember when I was a kid, I think we would camp by Buffalo Creek, and there would be no one around you for like a 5-mile radius when camping in Colorado. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, that's where I got my love from the outdoors, was from my mom and dad. They liked camping, and especially when we lived in Colorado. It's really beautiful. But yeah, if I went camping out there, definitely would have a base camp where I sleep every night. And then I would eat 2 to 3 miles I would eat away from my camp. I gotta give me some water. So yeah, you definitely want to eat far away from your base camp place. So that's what I gathered from watching the show Alone. That the first month, like I said, the contestants of Alone really enjoyed their first month, because during that first month they have a permanent base camp finally built. They're being successful at catching small game. They're catching like this one dude. I think he was just like a basic camp kind of dude. He didn't have the specific skills as all the other people on Alone, but he was really good at catching fish. So yeah, so that first month that he was out there, one of the contestants was really good at catching fish. And some of the other contestants also were really good at catching fish when it was kind of fall. And especially in Patagonia, it was fall. It was nice. Some of the contestants were lucky because where they were at, they were catching plenty of fish. But But then the second month, the winter started rolling in Patagonia. They were still catching fish, but it was starting to get a little bit less. And then that third month, the winter really set in, and the fishing almost came down to zero. Um, or maybe every other day they would catch a fish, but it started getting smaller and smaller. As more ice set in and more snow, it made it harder for them to get their edibles. So it made harder for them to find edibles. And that was on the third month. But like I said, that first month would spoil them. They would catch plenty of game. They would catch plenty of fish. They usually had their base camps really set up well. And so the first month made it really deceiving to the contestants of Alone, especially the ones that were in Patagonia. Because the first month was almost like a breeze. They were like, okay, I got this. But they were warned that the second and third month was not going to be like that. So a lot of them probably had in their minds that since the second and third month are going to be tougher to trap or gather wild edibles or fish even, since the second and third month was going to become slim, I'm sure some of them had in their head possibly about drying up different types of meat for jerky. I mean, I'd be really surprised if that was not in their head to dry up some of that meat so that it could carry them through the tough 2 winter months. All right. I'm going to go through before I end this live stream, I'm going to go at the very top of the chat. So I'm going to the very top of the chat, and I'm going to try and do this. If I remember, I'm going to try and do this every live stream I do. Instead of calling out the names, I'm just going to click on each of the comments so that you guys can see who came in my live stream and who visited. And this is my way of giving. So I'm going to try to remember to do this every live stream. And it's my way of kind of giving those channels a shout out. And for those of you who come across this this live stream later, please give these channels a look because they were nice to support me and come and watch my live stream. So here we go. We're going to click on each one of these here. And you'll get to see their comment, and you'll also get to see their channel name and their... So this was earlier in the video where they're saying hi to each other. And like I said, I'm clicking on these comments as a way to give each channel a shout out because I appreciate them coming. And I'm going to try to remember to do this at the end of each of my live streams. This will be my way of giving each of these channels a shout out. A lot of the channels that come visit my live streams, I actually go check out their live streams. So if you're not connected to any of these channels, they're really good people. I definitely would recommend you coming and checking out their channels. And especially since they're supporting me and coming to my live stream, please, 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 please go check out their channel. And once again, you'll get to see their channel name, and you'll also get to see their comments. And in some cases, they're talking to me, and in some cases, they're talking to people in the chat. But I'm going to try to remember to do this every live stream. Just coming. And like I said, this is my way of giving them a shout out. So, and once again, my name is JR, aka Lone Wolf Bushcraft, and you're watching the Lone Wolf Bushcraft live show. And right now, I'm clicking on each of these channels' comments, and it's my way of, I think it's a cool way to end my live streams. So, and if you're not connected to any of these channels, please connect to them. And for those of you who will be rewatching this live stream, if you see a channel name that you haven't checked out, please check out their channel. And if you end up liking their content, one of the best ways you can support their channels is by subscribing to them. Another cool way to support these channels that I'm showing here on my live stream here is, you subscribe to them, especially if you like their content. Give them a subscribe, and also hit like on any of the videos. If you enjoy some of the content they're sharing, make sure you give their videos a like. And like I said, I'm going to try to remember to do this every live. I'm going to try and do this at the end of all of my live streams. And then, of course, if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. But yeah, I'm going to try and do this every live stream. At the end of each of my live stream, I'm going to click on their comments just to give them a shout out. I'm always afraid to read off the names because I'm afraid I'm going to pronounce their channel name wrong. But they all know I appreciate them. So by doing this, or by ending my live stream this way, it shows I appreciate the love that's being shown my channel, which I really do. And what's cool, if they rewatch this, they'll get to see that I gave their channel a shout out by clicking on their comments. So this is my way of thanking them for stopping in on my live stream, which I really do appreciate. I just don't know why I didn't think about this before. I think it's and I want to be different from the other live streams, so I'm glad I'm kind of. And like I said, some of them are giving me a shout out and saying hi to me. And then some of them are saying hi to each other in the chat. And like I said, a lot of these channels whose comments I'm showing, a lot of them are really supportive of my channel and come and say hi to me on my live stream. And I really appreciate it. They're all super cool. And like I said, the reason I'm doing this way, because I'm afraid I'll pronounce their channel wrong. So yeah, please, if you're rewatching this live stream, please go check out these channels. A lot of them have some really cool content, and you definitely can be supportive of them if you subscribe. And yeah, definitely subscribe to them, especially if you enjoy their content. I mean, give them a subscribe. And then the other thing I would suggest, if you enjoy their content, make sure you share out their videos to friends and family so that more people can come across their content. That'd be cool too. So yeah, give them a subscribe, especially if you enjoy their content. Make sure you subscribe, and then make sure you give them a like. And then also make sure you hit that notification bell, because that also will, every time they upload a new video, you'll get to see their content. Especially if you hit that notification bell, you'll get to see their content. Or every time they upload a new video, you'll get to see their content. So, and sorry to you guys that did come in the chat that I was trying to stay on topic. There will be other live streams where I'm just hanging out and I'm talking directly to everyone in the chat. But I was trying to stay on my topics that I wanted to cover in this live stream. So whoever comes to my live streams, some live streams I'll make it clear that I'm hanging out and I'm going to talk to people in the live stream. And then other live streams, I'm just going to try and stay on topic. But I will do this no matter what live stream or no matter what my goal is to achieve in the live stream. I am going to do this at the end of every live stream. which is click on comments as a way to show them on my live stream and to give shout outs to those channels. And I'm also afraid that I will mispronounce a channel name. So I'd much rather just throw it up on my live screen here, and whoever rewatches this video will be able to clearly see the channel name, which is super cool. And like I said, a lot of these channels are really cool. I'm pretty much, I believe I'm pretty much subscribed to everyone on these. Yeah, all the channels I'm showing off right now, I'm pretty much subscribed to all of them. So I'm glad I'm throwing them on my live stream here, because I think I think they got cool content. So they're definitely worth checking out for sure. Like I said, I am afraid of mispronouncing these channel names. But yeah, please, and I guess I say this because I'm a YouTube creator. Whenever a YouTuber sees a new subscriber, they feel like their efforts are getting rewarded for putting up content, which is super cool. And at least I do. Whenever I get a new subscriber, I'm usually pretty stoked. Yeah, I'm definitely stoked whenever I get a new subscriber. All right. I believe I've gone through all the comments. So I'm glad I got to do that. I'm glad I got to share the love on this live stream here. And wow, we are a little over 2 hours and 1 minute. But that was worth it. I wanted to give those channels a shout out by simply clicking on their comments. And I'm going to see how that goes. I'm going to try that as a practice at the end of each live stream. Click on everyone's comments so that way I give their channel a shout out. So yeah, some of my 3 topics came from this book. And then, of course, the last topic, the person who gave me that idea for the last topic is I saw Panoy Hoys eat balut. And that's what gave me the topic of the bush recipes. So there's the wild edibles. I may talk about that on another live stream. But yeah, I'm glad I got to talk about the various different ways that the various different outdoor things you guys can eat. So that's pretty cool. And I think the first one I talked about was that small bread that you can make, and it looks like you pre-make the mix first, and then you don't add the water until you're actually outdoors and ready to bake your bread out there. So, but yeah, seeing Panoy Hoy eat that balut, congrats Panoy Hoy on achieving your challenge. So that $300 is going to a charity of his choice. So that's pretty cool. Thank you guys and gals. Once again, my name is JR, aka Lone Wolf Bushcraft. If you enjoyed this content, please give me a like. And also, if you like all the content you see on the Lone Wolf Bushcraft YouTube channel, or if you're enjoying, I need to cover one last thing. I do cover bushcraft on this channel, but I also cover, there's camping videos, hiking videos, and travel vlog videos. And I even do food vlog videos, especially when I go travel abroad. It's really fun to do travel vlog, food vlogs, and it's also fun to do travel vlogs. I don't know if I'll get to go to Hawaii. I'm trying to find out what the details are to go to Hawaii. I mean, me and my family, we all got our COVID shots. It's a matter of my wife and daughter are looking into it, but we may get to go to Hawaii. I don't know if that'll get to happen. A lot of cool things will have to align just right for us to make it to Hawaii. But if I do, I'll definitely do some travel vlogs from Hawaii. The last big place I got to go to was Cape Town, South Africa. Um, the other place I really enjoy going to often is Lima, Peru, South America. Uh, so, yeah, can't wait to get back to Lima, Peru, South America, and I would love to make it back to Cape Town, South Africa. That would be awesome. So, yeah, and I'll be stoked if I get to go to Hawaii. That'll be awesome. But like I said, oh my God, if I get to make it to Hawaii, I can make awesome travel food vlogs. And then, of course, I can get some awesome footage of Hawaii. That would be awesome. So, anyways, I hope you guys are all doing well. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, especially if you enjoy my content here. So, hit subscribe, hit like, and then make sure you hit that notification bell. Uh, you guys and gals rock. Thank you to my subscriber who's been with me from the beginning. And thank you also to my new subscribers who have just come on board the Lone Wolf Bushcraft YouTube channel. And yeah, thanks for joining the Lone Wolf Bushcraft live show. And I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you all are doing well out there. And I'll see you in the next live. I'll see you in the next live stream, or I'll see you in the next video. So take care, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace. Later, Gators. Take care, everybody. Peace.